Hello, and thank you for coming by our way. I appreciate you stopping and taking a few moments of your time. I've been carrying around in my heart for the last several days a thought from God's Word. It has to do with our burden. Our burden. And I believe that if we're not careful, what can happen is that we might appreciate someone else's burden or even pray for someone else as they go off to serve God, or maybe a missionary as he goes to labor and brings his family to a foreign field, or maybe a ministry of the church, or something like that. But if we're not careful, what will happen is we may appreciate someone else's burden to the neglect of our own. And I've been thinking along these lines in my Christian life that I don't want to just sit on the sidelines. And again, there's nothing wrong with appreciating another man's burden, but I don't want to just sit on the sidelines. I know that I need to have a burden in my soul. I want to take a verse of God's Word and kind of expound upon this just a little bit. It's from Isaiah chapter 6 and verse number 8. And this, of course, is after Isaiah saw a vision of God, and he saw that God is high and lifted up. And after God dealt with Isaiah, this is what the man said. He said in verse number 8 of Isaiah 6, "Also I heard the voice of the Lord, saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me." What I find so amazing about that is that Isaiah said, "Here am I, send me," but he had not been told anything as far as what God would have him to do. For example, God did not say, "I'm looking for a man to go to a foreign nation and start a church," or "I'm looking for a man to maybe start some kind of a Christian work in a community close by," or "I'm looking for someone to step up and be a preacher," or "I'm looking for someone to reach out and work with young children." He didn't say that. The Lord simply said, "Whom shall I send?" I've got to work, and I'm looking for someone to go. Whom shall I send? Well, without any further information, Isaiah simply said, "Here am I, send me. Here am I, send me." In my heart, that's the way it ought to be. Here am I, Lord, send me. No strings attached. No qualifications needed. Just simply, I want to do the will of God. I want to obey God in my life. I want to honor God and serve God. I believe that's having a burden. It's a burden not just for doing things, it's a burden for obeying God. It's a burden for finding and doing the will of God with your life. It's a burden for simply knowing the Lord, walking with the Lord, and just following the Master as He leads you. I believe so sadly, and I'm speaking of myself here, I believe so sadly that so many times we as Christian people, we spend our days without really thinking of a burden, the Lord's desire for this world and for our lives. I know that God's only given me one life to live. One life to live. I don't want to waste that life. I don't want to waste it on me, and I certainly don't want to waste it on the things of this world, and I don't want to waste it on doing good things to the neglect of the best things, doing good things to the neglect of the will of God in my life. Christian people, you can find from the Scriptures that Christians, believers, God's people, have been a people with a burden. You take Paul, for example, in Romans chapter 9, verses 1 through 3. Paul said, "If it were possible, I would go to hell so that my kinsmen, the Jewish people, so that they would not have to do so." Now, Paul, of course, knew he could not go to hell. He had been washed in the blood of the Lamb. Neither can anyone else go to hell who's been saved by the grace of God. But Paul simply said, "It's in my heart. It's my desire. It's my burden. I want to see God save souls. I want to see God change lives. And if I could, I would go to hell to keep someone else from going there." Jeremiah, he asked God to make his eyes fountains of tears, fountains of waters, so that he could weep and cry for God's people. He was a man with a burden. I want to ask you today, how is your burden? How is your burden? Now, I believe if you walk through Isaiah chapter 6, you're going to find that there's some things we need to consider before you get down to Isaiah's statement of "Here am I, send me." I believe you have to go through verses 1 through 7 before you get to verse 8. And so in coming videos, I want to share a few thoughts with you, and I trust that they'll be of help, and I trust that you'll take time to watch and think and listen. But pray for me. Please pray for me and the work God's given us to do, and I trust you have a wonderful day. May God bless you and keep our burden stirred for Christ.